On debate, Senator Black.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable colleagues, I rise again this evening to speak to Senator Coyle's inquiry, calling the attention of the Senate to the importance of finding solutions to transition Canada's society, economy and resource use in pursuit of a fair, prosperous and sustainable and peaceful net zero emissions future for our country and our planet. I am and always will be an advocate. I've worked in agriculture for most of my life. It's what I know best and will remain a primary focus as long as I serve Canadians in the Red Chamber. Thus, my focus this evening will be agriculture's role in the fight against climate change and the mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions in support of Canada's efforts to achieve net zero emissions. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, in 2016, agriculture contributed about 17% of greenhouse gas emissions globally, and that figure does not include an additional 7 to 14% caused by changes to land use. According to the Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, 10% of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions are from crop and livestock production, excluding emissions from the use of fossil fuels and from fertilizer production. These are significant numbers that we need to work to bring down. However, the onus cannot be placed solely on the farmers and the agriculture industry. They work hard to produce us with food, and most of them are good stewards of the land. And as stewards of the land, farmers are and have been heavily invested in the fight against climate change and mitigating its impacts. In many cases, our farmers face the brunt of climate change, as Canadian agriculture suffers greatly from the effects. The frequency of extreme weather events has doubled since the 1990s. There has been an increase in floods, droughts, forest fires, storms that unsurprisingly interfere with harvests, which disproportionately affect farms of all sizes. While we must recognize that agriculture is part of the problem when it comes to climate change, the agriculture has, I repeat has, demonstrated continuous improvement over many years, while emissions from other sectors have risen over time. Agriculture truly has an amazing potential to be an important part of the climate change solution. In fact, many farmers have already taken steps over the years to make their land a zero-till operation. This technique increases the retention of organic matter and nutrient cycling, which in turn increases carbon sequestration, or they use perennial forage cover crops. There's more carbon in soils under perennial forage than annual crops, due in part to the farmer's ability to better transfer carbon to the soil. In fact, the Canadian Federation of Agriculture shared that farmers have kept their emissions steady for 20 years while almost doubling production, resulting in a decrease of greenhouse gas emission intensity by 1/2. Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada also recognizes that agriculture helps slow climate change by storing carbon on agricultural lands. Storing or sequestering carbon in soil as organic matter, perennial vegetation, and in trees reduces carbon dioxide amounts in the atmosphere. We've also seen more technological advancements and innovation, including precision agriculture, the use of artificial intelligence, and drones that aims to decrease negative environmental impacts while also increasing profitability. We can also explore the possibility of scaling up technologies that we already know yield positive environmental outcomes. There are many other innovative methods farmers employ in order to protect the environment without sacrificing profitability. As an example of this is reintegrating livestock and crops on the farm and managed grazing, which can increase livestock's nutrient consumption as well as increase soil organic matter. Additionally, vertical farming and urban farming have gained popularity in recent years. These innovative ways of producing quality foods allows us to grow crops in cities without taking up much space. We are also seeing the use of hydroponics, meaning growing crops directly in nutrient-enriched water rather than soil. The challenge for agriculture and agri-food sector will be to mitigate their emissions while adapting to the impacts of climate change without jeopardizing food security. And to do so, Canadian agriculture producers and food processors will need the government's and the public's support in transitioning their operations to be more sustainable, and they will also require their support while they seek to change decades-long practices and procedures. Many organizations, including the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, the Canadian Cattle Association, Canadian Pork Council, among others, have highlighted their dedication to supporting Canada's fight against climate change over the past few years. There are, of course, specific concerns to each sector regarding such issues as fair carbon pricing and other potential impacts to overall sustainability of the industries. But overall, Canadian agriculture knows that they have a critical role to play as stewards of the land, which involves preserving ecosystems and resources such as soil and water, as well as minimizing the environmental impacts of their activities through the implementation of beneficial agricultural practices. At this time, I would like to pivot to the role of soil health in the environment and how it can and does affect climate change. I have risen on a number of occasions in this chamber and in the Agriculture and Forestry Committee to speak about the importance of soil health. As you may know, the Standing Committee on Agriculture and Forestry is undertaking a new soil health study. As one of Canada's most precious natural resources, soil conservation is a top-of-mind matter for the agriculture and agri-food sector. The future of this country is intrinsically linked to the health of its ecosystem, which in itself hinges on soil health. And in relation to this inquiry, soils across Canada play a critical role in carbon storage and can help deliver on Canada's net zero targets. Healthy soil is arguably one of the most critical resources for the health of our natural and agro-ecosystems so that they can sustain food production as well as the provision of ecosystem services. Knowing how to manage soils and understanding how soils function is key to their productivity and long-term sustainability. Ensuring the health and conservation of Canadian land is a shared responsibility and will require collective leadership and sustained commitment and action by those directly responsible for managing soil across the country. However, it is concerning to think that Ontario is losing almost 319 acres of farmland every day. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge the Ontario Federation of Agriculture's Homegrown campaign. It's high time that we work together to protect local farms across this province and across Canada from being lost to urban sprawl. When we lose farmland, we lose the food that would have been cultivated there, as well as the positive benefits of green space. That loss directly contributes to our ability to maintain a strong, stable food supply chain and contributes to the loss of ecosystems. In March 2019, a report by the Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute entitled Clean Growth in Agriculture highlighted that, and I quote, Canadian agriculture has steadily reduced its greenhouse gas emissions intensity as a result of dramatic disruptive technological changes. The efforts by government, industry and academia continue to enable the industry not only to reduce its emissions, but to become a net sink and provide solutions for the rest of the economy, end quote. Soil health and climate change are intrinsically linked. On the one hand, soils are the second largest carbon sink after our oceans, storing 3 times more carbon than is found in the atmosphere. On the other hand, rising temperatures and changing precipitation patterns can lead to soil erosion and fertility loss, and a decline in soil's ability to carry out basic ecosystem services. We know that soil is not a renewable resource, and we don't have much time left to save our soil. Some experts say less than 50 years. Additionally, the cost of soil degradation in Canada is estimated at over $3 billion annually, and this will only increase if nothing is done. Improving soil health is not a one-size-fits-all endeavour across Canada's varied landscape, but it is clear that healthy soil has an important role to play in our economy, environment, and society, including helping our country reach our net zero targets. Honourable colleagues, we know that climate change is one of the biggest issues facing our world. It is clear that the agricultural industry understands and supports the call to action to fight climate change. However, we are asking a lot of our farmers. Many agricultural operations rely on decades-old practices that have only recently been deemed as environmentally detrimental. I am taking this opportunity to once again call upon the Canadian government to work collaboratively with our agricultural industry so that they can help make the journey to environmental sustainability a little easier for everyone. I am confident that the agricultural industry, which has been innovating for as long as it has existed, will continue to rise to the challenge by helping in the fight against climate change. Of course, initiatives must come from all sectors and be a joint effort from all of us. And in order to achieve our goals in greenhouse gas reduction, government and industry must work together. I know that many of us in this chamber have children and grandchildren. Without working together to challenge and change the effects of climate change, I fear they will be living in a world entirely different than the one we know today. I appreciate the opportunity to provide an agricultural perspective in the Senate and thank my honourable colleague for bringing this inquiry forward. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.